Right. Hi. Good evening, everybody. Hi, Anita and everybody else who's joining us again this evening for our reading of 1001. I'm going to sort myself out. 1001 Arabian Nights, and we are now on the 11th night. For those of you who have only just tuned in, greetings. It's so lovely to have you here. Saman Giraud and I, as director of the Vienna Theatre Project, started reading these wonderful stories from 1001 Arabian Nights 2 weeks ago, thinking how pleasant and kind it would be to read soft, gentle fairy tale stories and enjoy our evening. Hi, Saman. And enjoy our evening in peace and quiet and beauty, only to discover that the book is full of rapes and pillaging and slaves. And the last 2 nights have been very exciting indeed, as we came upon these 3 ladies and a porter who ended up wining and dining together at the house of one of the 3 ladies. And through the process of the evening, thank you very much for the hearts, through the process of the evening, they decided to teach each other what, first of all, the names of the female clitorises were for the 3 separate ladies, and then the porter asked the ladies what the name of his penis was. So this all became rather delectable and exciting, the whole thing, and people getting naked and all sorts. And then, over the course of 10 minutes after all this happened, 2 separate sets of guests arrived. The first were 3 Persian calendars, and these are like monks who are weary travellers on their way, and they were all blind in their left eye. And shortly after they had arrived and been given the offer of beverage and drinks and somewhere to stay for the night by these 3 ladies and the porter, the Caliph Harun al-Rashid arrived with his wazir and his sword of vengeance. Now, the thing about these 3 ladies was, when they first met the porter and the porter was with them and helped them, they had said to him he may see some things that evening, but he is never ever allowed to ask them why he has seen the things he has seen and what their reason is, on pain of something terrible happening to him. Now, of course, when our 3 latter guests arrived, the Caliph, the Wazir, and his swords of vengeance, they are also alerted to the fact that they cannot ask questions if they are going to take rest and respite at the hostess's palace or mansion that evening. They must not also ask questions about the whys and wherefores of these 3 very beautiful ladies. What happens, though, through the course of the next hour or so, first of all, the first lady asks for 2 of her dogs to be brought forward by the porter, which he does, and the dogs are already looking very apprehensive when she arrives. She then beats the 2 dogs, and each time she beats the 2 dogs, she hugs them and gives them much love afterwards. Then the second beautiful lady sings songs, and every time she sings the songs 3 times, she strips off, faints, and then shows that she has huge whip scars on her back. Now, the Caliph and his entourage, actually not his wazir, because his wazir says, no, we shouldn't do this, demand to know what the reason for them having these strange occurrences is. And they end up getting the porter to ask the question of the 3 ladies, although he doesn't particularly want to, and the wazir says this is not a good idea. And in doing so, the 3 ladies say, you have broken our trust, and suddenly slaves appear, tie up the gentlemen and ask if they should behead them. And now, at this request, the porter has said, please behead me not. And he has said, and this is where we continue our story, how fair is Ruth the strong man deigns not smother, and fair is fair when shown to weakest brother, by love's own holy tie between us twain, let me not suffer for the sin of other. When the porter ended his verse, the lady laughed, and Scheherazade perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. And so now, of course, welcome. We are now on what it was, the 11th night of 1001 Arabian Nights. Scheherazade said, "It had reached me, O auspicious king, that the lady, after laughing at the porter, despite her wrath, came up to the party and spake thus, Tell me who you be, for ye have but no hour of life, and were ye not men of rank, and perhaps notables of your tribe, you had not been so forward, and I had hastened your doom." Then said the Caliph, "Woe to thee, O Jafar! Tell who we are, lest we be slain by mistake, and speak her fair before some horror befall us." "This part of thy desert," replied he, whereupon the Caliph cried out of him, saying, "There is a time for witty words, and there is a time for serious work." I hope you can't hear my dog snoring quite heavily in the background. If you can hear this, please somebody give me a thumbs up, then I'll try and wake him up and make him stop. Otherwise, I'll continue. So, where were we? "This be part of thy deserts," replied he, whereupon the Caliph cried out at him, saying, "There is a time for witty words, and there is a time for serious work." Then the lady accosted the 3 Qalandars and asked them, "Are ye brothers?" When they answered, "No, by Allah, we be naught but fakirs and foreigners." Then quoth she to one among them, "Wast thou born blind of one eye?" And quoth he, "No, by Allah, 'twas a marvellous matter, and a wondrous mischance which caused my eye to be torn out, and mine is a tale which, if it were written upon the eye corners with needle gravers, were a warner to those who would be warned." She questioned the 2nd and the 3rd Kalandar, but all replied like the first, "By Allah, O our mistress, each one of us cometh from a different country, and we are all 3 the sons of kings, sovereign princes ruling over suzerains and capital cities." Thereupon she turned towards them and said, "Let each and every of you tell me his tale in due order, and explain the cause of his coming to our palace. And if his story please us, let him stroke his head," and that means cough his head, "and wend his way." The first to come forward was the Hamal, the porter, who said, "Oh, my lady, I am a man and a porter. This Jane, the cateress, hired me in to carry a load, and took me first to the shop of a vintner, then to the booth of a butcher, thence to the stalls of a fruiterer, thence to a grocer who also sold dry fruit, thence to a confectioner and perfumer cum druggist, and from him to this palace, where there happened to me with you what happened. Such is my story, and peace be on us all." At this, the lady laughed and said, "Rub thy head and wend thy ways." But he cried, "By Allah, I will not stump it till I hear the stories of my companions." Then came forward one of the monoculars and began to tell her. This is the 1st Kalandar's tale. "Know, O my lady, that the cause of my beard being shorn and my eye being out-torn was as follows. My father was a king, and he had a brother who was a king over another city. And it came to pass that I and my cousin, the son of my paternal uncle, were both born on one day and the same day. And years and days rolled on, and as we grew up, I used to visit my uncle every now and then, and to spend a certain number of months with him. Now my cousin and I were sworn friends, for he ever entreated me with exceeding kindness. He killed for me the fattest sheep, and strained the best of his wines, and we enjoyed long conversing and carousing. One day, when the wine had gotten the better of us, the son of my uncle said to me, "Oh, my cousin, I have a great service to ask of thee. I desire that thou stay me not in what I so desire to do." And I replied, "With joy and goodly will." Then he made me swear the most binding oaths and left me. But after a little while he returned, leading a lady veiled and richly apparelled with ornaments worth a large sum of money. Presently he turned to me, the woman being still behind him, and said, "Take this lady with thee, and go before me to such a burial ground," describing it so that I knew the place, "and enter with her into such a sepulchre, and there await my coming." The oath I swore to him made me keep silence and suffered me not to oppose him. So I led the woman to the cemetery, and both I and she took our seats in the sepulchre. And hardly had we sat down when in came my uncle's son with a bowl of water, a bag of mortar, and an adze somewhat like a hoe. He went straight to the tomb in the midst of the sepulchre, and breaking it open with the adze, set the stones on one side. Then he fell to digging into the earth of the tomb till he came upon a large iron plate, the size of a wicket door. And on raising it, there appeared below it a staircase vaulted and winding. Then he turned to the lady and said to her, "Come now, and take thy final choice." She at once went down the staircase and disappeared. Then quoth he to me, "O son of my uncle, by way of completing thy kindness, when I shall have descended into this place, restore the trapdoor to where it was, and heap back the earth upon it as it lay before, and then, of thy great goodness, mix this unslaked lime which is in the bag with this water which is in the bowl, and after building up the stones, plaster the outside so that none looking upon it shall say, 'This is a new opening in an old tomb.' For a whole year now have I worked at this place, whereof none knoweth but Allah, and this is the need I have of thee." Presently adding, "May Allah never bereave thy friends of thee, nor make them desolate for thine absence, O son of my uncle, O my dear cousin." And he went down the stairs and disappeared for ever. When he was lost to the sight, I replaced the iron plate and did all his bidding till the tomb became as it was before, and I worked almost unconsciously, for my head was heated with the wine. Returning to the place of my uncle, I was told that he had gone forth sporting and hunting, so I slept that night without seeing him. And when the morning dawned, I remembered the scenes of the past evening and what had happened between me and my cousin. I repented for having obeyed him. When penitence was of no avail, I still thought, however, that it was a dream. So I fell to asking for the son of my uncle, but there was none to answer me concerning him. And I went to the graveyard and the sepulchres, and sought for the tomb under which he was, but could not find it. And I ceased not wandering about from sepulchre to sepulchre, and tomb to tomb, all without success, till night set in. So I returned to the city, yet I could neither eat nor drink, my thoughts being engrossed with my cousin, for that I knew not what had become of him. And I grieved with exceeding grief, and passed another sorrowful night, watching until the morning. Then went I a second time to the cemetery, pondering over what the son of mine uncle had done, and sorely repenting my hearkening to him. Went around among all the tombs, but could not find the tomb I sought. I mourned over the past, and remained in my mourning for 7 days, seeking the place and ever missing the path. Then my torture of scruples grew upon me, till I well nigh went mad, and I found no way to dispel my grief, save travel and return to my father. So I set out and journeyed homeward. But as I was entering my father's capital, a crowd of rioters sprang upon me and pinioned me. I wondered thereat with all wonderment, seeing that I was the son of the Sultan, and these men were my father's subjects, and amongst them were some of my own slaves. A great fear fell upon me, and I said to my soul, would heaven I knew what had happened to my father. I questioned those that bound me of the cause of their so doing, but they returned me no answer. However, after a while one of them said to me, and he had been a hired servant of our house, fortune hath been false to thy father. His troops betrayed him when his wazir who slew him now reigneth in his stead, and we lay in wait to seize thee by the bidding of him. I was well nigh distraught, and felt ready to faint on hearing of my father's death, when they carried me off and placed me in the presence of the usurper. Now, between me and him, there was an old golden grudge, the cause of which was this. I was fond of shooting with a stone bow, and it befell one day, as I was standing on the terrace roof of the palace, that a bird lighted on the top of the wazir's house, when he happened to be there. I shot at the bird and missed the mark, but I hit the wazir's eye and knocked it out as fate and fortune decreed. Even so saith the poet, we tread the path where fate hath led us, the path fate which we faith must tread. A man in one land doomed to die, death nowhere else shall do him dead. And on likewise saith another, let fortune have her wanton way, take heart and all her words obey, nor joy nor mourn at anything, for all things pass and no things stay. Now, when I knocked out the wazir's eye, he could not say a single word, for that my father was king of the city. But he hated me ever after, and dire was the grudge that caused us between us a twain. So, when I was set before him hand-bound and pinioned, he straightway gave orders for me to be beheaded. I asked, for what crime wilt thou put me to death? Whereupon he answered, what crime is greater than this? Pointing the while to the place where his eye had been. Quoth I, this I did by accident, not of malice prepense. Quoth he, if thou didst it by accident, I will do the like by thee with intention. Then cried he, bring him forward. and they brought me up to him, when he thrust his finger into my left eye and gouged it out, whereupon I became one-eyed as you see me. Then he bade bind me hand and foot, and put me into a chest, and said to the sworder, "Take charge of this fellow, and go off with him to the wastelands about the city. Then draw thy scimitar and slay him. Leave him to feed the beasts and the birds." So the headsman fared forth with me, and when he was in the midst of the desert, he took me out of the chest, and I was with both hands pinioned and both feet fettered, and was about to bandage my eye before striking off my head. But I wept with exceeding weeping until I made him weep with me, and looking at him I began to recite these couplets. I deemed you coat o' mail that should withstand the foreman's shaft and prove foreman's brand. I hope your aidance in mine every chance. Thou fail my left to aid, my dexter hand. Aloof you stand, hear the railers jibe, while rain their shafts on me the jiber hand. But an ye will not guard me from my foes, stand clear and succour neither these nor those. And I also quoted, I deemed my brethren mail of strongest steel, and so they were, from foes to fend my dart. I deemed their arrows surest of their aim, and so they were, when aiming at my heart. When the headman heard my lines, he had been sworded to my sire, and he owed him a debt of gratitude. He cried, "O my lord, what can I do, being but a slave under orders?" Presently adding, his son and the lady who had gone down with him to the tomb. Oh, I think I've skipped a page. I'm so sorry. Presently adding, "Fly for thy life, and never more return to this land, or they will slay thee and slay me with thee, even as the poet said, take thy life and fly whenas evil's threat. Let the ruined house tell its owner's fate. New land for the old thou shalt seek and find. To find new life thou must not await. Strange that men should sit in the stead of shame, when Allah's world is so wide and great. And trust not other in matters grave. Life itself must act for a life beset. Neither would prowl the lion with maimed neck, did he reckon on and all of others wreck. Hardly believing in my escape, I kissed his hand and thought the loss of my eye was a light matter in consideration of my escaping from being slain. I arrived at my uncle's capital, and going to him, told him of what had befallen my father and myself. Whereat he wept with sore weeping and said, Verily thou addest grief to my grief and woe to my woe, for thy cousin hath been missing these many days. I wot not what hath happened to him, and none can give me news of him. And he wept till he fainted. I sorrowed and condoled with him. He would have applied certain medications to my eye, but he saw that it was become as a walnut with the shell empty. Then said he, O my son, better to lose eye and keep life. After that, I could no longer remain silent about my cousin, who was his only son, and one dearly loved. So I told him all that had happened. He rejoiced with extreme joyance to hear news of his son, and said, Come now, show me this tomb. But I replied, By Allah, O my uncle, I know not its place, though I sought it carefully full many times, yet could not find the site. However, I and my uncle went to the graveyard and looked right and left, till at last I recognised the tomb, and we both rejoiced with exceeding joy. We entered the sepulchre and loosened the earth about the grave. Then, upraising the trapdoor, descended some 50 steps till we came to the foot of the staircase, when lo, we were stopped by a blinding smoke. Thereupon said my uncle, that saying whose sayer shall never come to shame, there is no majesty and there is no might save in Allah, the glorious and the great. And we advanced till we suddenly came upon a saloon, whose floor was strewed with flour and grain and provisions and all manners necessary, and in the midst of it stood a canopy sheltering a couch. Thereupon my uncle went up to the couch, and inspecting it, found his son and the lady who had gone down with him into the tomb, lying in each other's embrace. But the twain had become black as charred wood. It was as if they had been cast into a pit of fire. When my uncle saw this spectacle, he spat in his son's face and said, "Thou hast thy deserts, O thou hog! This is thy judgment in the transitory world, and yet remaineth the judgment in the world to come a durer and a more enduring." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. And so, dear friends, ends the story of the 11th night. If you want to find out what happened to the calendar, and if you want to find out what happened to his cousin and why he has been burnt into soot, and if you want to find out who the lady was that the cousin took down into the sepulchre with him, into his tomb, and I can promise you it is quite a shocking story, but I cannot give anything away right now because I have to leave that to Saman to do on Tuesday. She's going to have her eyes are going to be widening when she reads this story because it really is rather special. Let us just say that. It is now exactly 2:15 and we started at exactly 2:45. I want to wish you all a very wonderful rest of the weekend, Sunday, and a beautiful Monday. I hope wherever you are around the world or in Austria that you have had a wonderful Saturday or are about to have a wonderful Saturday. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed tonight's story. Wasn't as saucy as the last couple of nights, but something is about to happen which is quite interesting. I'm not sure whether it's good, but it's interesting. And I'm going to give you some advice. I'm going to leave you with something very special today. I don't know whether any of you ever follow Jay Shetty. I don't normally actually, but I happened upon something that he did today, and I don't know whether many of you sometimes find what's going on in the world right now a little bit stressful. And something which Jay Shetty showed today in a meditation that he did, which was really, really very interesting, was that if you get into a comfortable position, you sit down and you breathe in 4 breaths, and as you breathe in the 4 breaths, you clench your hands together and then hold your breath for 2 seconds and then breathe out 7 breaths. And as you breathe out 7 times, so breathe out, you release your hands. So you breathe in for 4, clenching your hands, hold your breath, and then release your hands slowly for 7. And as you release your hands, feel the stress of your day, whether it's news you've heard on the television, in a newspaper, on social media, something that has upset you, something that you are holding on to that is making you very anxious at the moment with things that are obviously unusual and going on around the world. I did this in this meditation today. It's the first time I've actually done, I'm not really a meditation person normally, it's the first time I've done this, but I found it very, very relieving and very relaxing. We did it together for about 10 minutes and then he did some other stuff for another 5 minutes. And it really was very relieving just to breathe in, clench your hands, hold your breath, and then over 7 seconds, release your breath and release your hands too, and just feel all the stress of your day or your evening, things going on around you. Maybe you are a nurse in a hospital somewhere, or a doctor, or you're somewhere in a shop, or I have a friend who works in a tobacco here in Austria, and she comes into confrontation with people all day long because it's also her tobacco is very small. My son is actually working in an old people's home, and he goes in every morning at 6:15 in the morning, and they measure his temperature every day, and he has to wash his hands all day long, wear a mask. He's working in the kitchens. He comes home exhausted at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So wherever you are in the world, this is a wonderful, wonderful way to be able to relax. Next week, and we are actually finally going to have some special readers come and join us. One of them will hopefully be Jihad, was supposed to come on today actually, but unfortunately he's had some internet problems, so we're trying to sort that out at the moment. So he will be online next week. And on that note, I will leave you with those lovely words of relaxation. I wish you a wonderful evening, a wonderful day. Relax, enjoy the sunshine, the rain, whatever it is. Make sure you are doing something that is good and positive for yourself, and have a very, very calming time. Thank you very much for listening in. Many salams. It was a pleasure reading for you this evening, and good night. Bye.